The Universal Museum is an invention of England in the mid-18th century. And when you say the British museums are not British, you are not British. In fact, you get it wrong. They are essentially British for what they do, namely, to collect the art of the world. Thank you, thank you. I usually ask my wife, who sits at the back, if I know where you are. If she can hear me. But since she's right here, it doesn't do any good. Can you hear me back there? Great. This is my second visit. And I was very surprised to get the invitation to come back. Why? Because the last time I was here, I lost. Not even a little bit. I lost a lot. Stephen Fry was sitting right opposite me, and we were debating the Parthenon marbles. And after it was all over, there was a stampede toward the door, wherever that is, that said, Stephen Fry, my side wins. So when Louis, and I call him Louis because we had dinner together tonight, and I feel very close to him. When Louis got in touch with me a couple of weeks ago, I said, Louis, I'll come back on one condition. Stephen Fry stays away. Anyway, I'm here to talk about the British Museum. Why? For three reasons. One, it's the biggest. Two, it's in deep trouble. And three, it changed my life. When I was your age, not your, but some of you anyway, namely 20 years old in 1967, I made my first trip to Europe, and the first stop was London. And the first stop in London was the British Museum. Now, I come from a little town in Minnesota in the Midwest. Are you from Minnesota? Bravo, Minneapolis. So I come from the northern part of the state, and up there I was 300 miles from the nearest museum. And my parents, while they loved music, had no time for museums, so no, I didn't go to that one. But for reasons I cannot understand, as an undergraduate, I fell in love with art. From that textbook we had there in 1963-ish, which had little black and white pictures. And here I'm in London in the British Museum, and all of a sudden, that textbook came to life. And I still can walk that path in my mind's eye after nearly 75 years? No, my wife says no, it's only 25 years. It's been a long time. Walk the path from the Nineveh sculptures of the Lion Hunt to the Rosetta Stone. You take a left, and you see Ramses. He's pretty big. Then you go straight ahead in the Duveen Gallery, rather cold, and take a right, and there's the river god from the Parthenon. And from 1967 to today, I remember that first visit. Now, that visit changed my life. Same wife. Changed my life insofar as 27 years later, I applied for the job to be director of the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore. The Walters Art Museum is as if a child of the Metropolitan Museum in New York. 5 millennia, 5 continents, a survey, a universal museum. The Metropolitan Museum in New York was founded 150 years after the British Museum on the model of the British Museum and the National Gallery in London melded together. The idea was that you could see all the art of the world in one place at one time. Now, from 1967, it was years until I would see the pyramids, and quite a while before I would get to the Acropolis. And I will never get to northern Iraq to see the sites of the Assyrian monuments. But they were all there in one place. And my 20-year-old mind saw that as a gift to me. The Universal Museum is an invention of England in the mid-18th century. And when you say the British museums are not British, you are not British. In fact, you get it wrong. They are essentially British for what they do, namely, to collect the art of the world. If they were British only, oh, we got a thing from the floor. By the way, can I hear the question before I say no? Well, I'll take it. Go ahead. Be nice, I'm an old guy.
As an Indian citizen, requires you to show a bank account, an English language certification, and pay more money than most people in that country will ever make in their lives. And they will never get to see their own culture, or their own temples, or their own art, or their own materials, because it sits somewhere in London. How is that fair? How is the University Museum doing anything except for those privileged members in that country?
Louis, I should have said no. Let bygones be bygones. Anyway, so the British Museum is essentially British because it does what it intended to do. And if you went to the British Museum and it had just British art, you could roller skate through galleries 4 through 20. And you would have to go up the stairs before you saw Sutton Hoo and the Lewis Chessmen. So it's doing a good job, and it's a job it's intended to do. But it is in deep trouble. A little theft, big problems. So you're here for 20 years. A curator of Greek art is pilfering the stuff in the basement. 20 years, that's a long time. And by the way, he takes little things, so nobody will know the difference. And he sells some of them on eBay, okay? So that's a big scandal, and it came out last July. And it's a big scandal because the British Museum had 2 jobs to do in life. 1, collect the art of the world, and 2, keep it safe. And for all these years, when the Greeks said, give us those marbles back, the British Museum said, well, we can keep them safe in a way you cannot. And now they can't say that anymore. So you say to yourself, how can there be a thief in our midst? In fact, there are lots of thieves in museums. Think about it. Why do people choose to work in art museums? Because they love the stuff that's there. Sometimes they love it too much, and they take it home with them. No. I was close. So the thief, No, I did not. No, I took one. Look, you're interfering with my 10 minutes. Stop the clock. So what I'm saying to you, that thief from the inside is hardly uncommon. That's not what counts. What counts is that the people at the top said to the guy from the outside, you got a thief in your midst. They said, go away. So he did. The deputy director went away, and then the director went away. And what did we learn after that? That nearly half of the objects in the basement of the British Museum are not properly cataloged. Which means to say you could take them and they'd never know the difference. Which apparently for 20 years they didn't know the difference. Not only that, the roof is leaking. And not only that, you know what the curator at the British Museum makes? Less than half of what his counterpart in New York makes. The new director has just been hired. His pay, US dollars, $275,000. The pay of the director, yes, it is true. The pay of the director of the Met in New York is $1 million. So the chairman of the board tells us it's going to cost $1 billion US, more than $1 billion, to fix the roof. Where's that money going to come from? The chair of the board of the British Museum is the one who cut the budget of the British Museum by 30% over the last 15 years. So they've got no money, they've got big problems. The biggest problem they have at the British Museum is not money and not a thief in their midst, because every museum has a thief, at least one. The problem is arrogance. And the arrogance is revealed by 2 things. First, that when somebody told them they had a thief in the basement, they said, go away. They refused to investigate. And the second symptom of that arrogance is the feet dragging on the Parthenon marbles. So how to fix it? I'm going to play a little game with you. I'm pretending that I applied to be director of the British Museum, and I'm being interviewed by the board. And George Osborne said, Mr. Vikan, thank you for coming from the United States. I know the United States has great museums. I say, fine. I've got an idea of what you should do. First of all, to fix this museum, it's going to take you 30 years. It's not going to happen overnight. There are a lot of things that are wrong deep down. The easy things are the cataloging of the collection, the salaries of the staff, security procedures. The harder thing is to fix the building because it's so expensive. And the harder thing than that is to reinstall the galleries, because that's going to oblige you to consider how you rid this place of the residue of colonialism. And I'm going to tell him that there are 4 principles to guide you to regain trust and high ground for the British Museum. The first is humility. To admit there have been mistakes, big mistakes. 2, dialogue. That you need to have open, candid, and fair dialogue across the globe. The third is consent. You need to have consent from the source countries. And the fourth is partnerships. And by the way, you think you're going to empty the galleries? Not so. The amount of art at the British Museum that is contested, there are 8 million things in that museum. The amount that is contested is teeny. Some of it needs to go back. The Benin bronze story is as ugly as the Benin bronzes are beautiful. They need to go home. They need to go home like the Asante gold needs to go home. It is nothing more than obvious. And the British Museum needs to demonstrate that it has the wherewithal to act. The second thing are the Parthenon marbles, and I see them as different. The Benin bronzes are still ceremonially significant. They were taken by violence, and they are defining of national identity. The marbles are certainly defining of national identity. They were not taken by violence, and good arguments can be made that good title resides here in Britain for the Parthenon marbles. But from my point of view, I see the Parthenon marbles as if, is that 9? Okay. I see the Parthenon marbles as if they are somehow a family that's been ripped apart. And that family belongs back together. And so the Parthenon marbles need to go home. Okay. So, John Osborne says, where are you going to find the money? I said, well, the Egyptians just spent $1 billion on their museum in Giza. We ought to be able to do that. And in my experience in museums, money follows vision and values. It's that simple. Museums should be free. Free admission is precious, and you need to preserve it. So I would say, that was a short minute. I would say to the, all of that having passed, I will tell you that I would have applied to be director of the British Museum, but for 2 reasons. The first is I'm too old to see it through. And the second is the pay is lousy. Thank you.